The first ride I had in an airplane was when I went to lab school from Perrinfield. And we got the B-25. Well, B-25, you hoist yourself up through this hole in the floor. You know, there's a place for the gunners to sit, and you sit in there, sit on the floor, and there's, you know, just like, or sit on your suitcase or duffel bag, whatever you had. And so, but you don't see very much looking out the windows there. So that was my first ride. And the B-25 sits on 3 wheels. It's tricycle gear. And when they start running the engines up, the whole thing shakes and shudders. And you think it's going to fall apart. I mean, you can't hear yourself think. There's bang and there's terrible noise. It's shaking like, that was my first ride in an airplane. The bomb bay was between you and the thing, just a little catwalk to get up to the cockpit. And passengers weren't allowed to get up there, so forget it. But I went to San Antonio again and to go to lab school. And lab school is another story. We'll get that. So there's a bunch of clowns in there. We had fun there. And when I went to Mitchell Field, which is named after Billy Mitchell, and the B-25 was called a Mitchell, and he was big in the Air Force. He was one of the founders of the real Air Force. And they put me in a B-25, and I went back to Oklahoma and be sitting back in the same hole. My first airplane ride was in a C-47 air evacuating a patient. We had a guy who had polio, bad case of polio, and I walked up to the patient's room, and there were 2 doctors in there, and we'd borrowed a mechanical and dry cell battery, auto battery operated iron lung that you put on your chest, and it would pump you, but not very well. And so they had borrowed that from a hospital in town and got it on the guy, and we're trying to figure out how to make it work. I was a lab tech, but I also was kind of the go-to guy. You know, they'd say, well, go see what Mac has to say about this. Well, I walked in with the lab work, and the doctors, I found out what they're doing. I said, here, let me see this. And I made it work, you know, because it was just, either he can do stuff like that, he can't, you know. So anyway, so the doctor says, you're going to San Antonio with him. That was it, no questions asked. I had my whites on. I had a handkerchief looped over my belt. So the whites had a drawstring, you know, no pockets. So I had a couple of cigarettes in my shirt pocket, and I didn't have any ID card. It was in my footlock in the barracks. I had the key to that, and that was it. So I stayed with the patient. They wouldn't let me go back. I could take a leak, but I couldn't go back. Oh no, you're going to stay with this guy. So we got him in the ambulance, got him down to the airport, to the base flight line. And the flight chief came out and said, well, who's going with him? And I said, I am. He said, okay, let me show you something. Because he knew I was associating with the patient. So he showed me, he said, now, this is how you pull the ladder back in. You had a little ladder hook ladder to get in. And this is how you shut this door. He said, I pulled all the locks, aileron and rudder locks out. So you don't have to worry about that. The plane's ready to go. He said, I'll be up in the cockpit with the crew. He said, when you get your patient on board, he said, you shut that door, knock on my door, and we'll fly to San Antonio. He said, but I'm not coming out, and don't you come in. That poor guy was so bad that he could just whisper, and the plane was making noise. I'd have to put my ear right to his mouth to hear what he had to say, and which I did, because I wasn't worried about polio. I mean, I didn't worry about anything like that. I just didn't worry about crap like that. You're a medic, you do it. We got the guy over to Fort Sam's, Brooke Army Medical Center, and I didn't think about it, but a year later, I'd be back working at BAMC at the Field Service School. And I put him in the big tank and turned him over there. Said, okay, it's all yours. Wished him luck. And the big tank made him breathe. He didn't have that metal thing. We took that back with us to give it back to the other guys to his town. And we went back over to Randolph Air Base, which was our home base for the air evac thing. Although there was an air evac airplane. Well, I was sitting at Randolph. It's late in the evening now, and I'm freezing because I don't know what time of year it was, but I didn't have a jacket or anything. You know, I didn't have time. They wouldn't let me go anything. This doctor said, "You go stay with that guy. Go keep his patient alive till he got him out of his sight." But anyway, the crew chief would keep his eye on me, and if I moved anywhere close to him, he'd get up and move. Base ops officer figured out that our plane was supposed to be grounded, have a red tag on the wheel because it had a maintenance problem. The guy at Perrin had said, "Okay, you can take the red tag off to fly at this thing," because it wasn't something it was going to fall a plane out of the air, but it was something that had to be fixed. Well, this guy down there, he was saying, "Hey, you can't fly that plane. It's red tag," and we finally convinced him, but that took another hour or so hanging around. Then we went back to the base, and that was all the day's work. Next day, I'm back in the lab.